Welcome to Shorty Supercoach, and how good is it to have footy really back? It was great last week, but we are right into it now. Official practice games, broadcast, everything. It's great to see. And I've never seen such an appetite and excitement for practice games, but I guess that's where we're at. With the year we had last year, it's probably to be expected. So, from a Supercoach point of view, who do we want to keep our eye on? And before I get stuck into that, there'll be leagues dropping throughout next week and probably on Saturday, actually. So there's a video out for that, just to sort of let you all know when I'll be putting those codes out. And thanks to everyone who got involved on the live Q&A the other day. That was a massive success. I was really taken aback, to be honest. I didn't anticipate such interest, so I'll definitely be doing that again before the first bounce of the AFL season for sure. So I think we'll have all these pracky games done and dusted, get a feel for it, and then we'll be able to meet again and we can smash out some more questions and hopefully I can get through them a little quicker, just to hopefully get through to most of you guys that asked a question. So yeah, hope you can tune in next time. But today we're just going to really go through a stack of names. You know, stack of names. Some I'll talk about more than others, but more or less it's just a watch list, you know. The games, who's on your radar, and I'm sure there'll be a few that I miss, so let me know if there's someone that I don't talk about that's on your radar. Feel free to hit me up. But there are a few games, you know, that have a bit more interest than others, but it's just, you know, it's just exciting to have footy back, to be honest. So we got Carlton and St Kilda today, tonight, which will be exciting. And the funny thing is, I'm actually not really looking for anything this week. I don't need to see much more. I'm pretty set on my premiums, pretty set on some other guys. I'm really keen to see rookies. That's one thing I'm super keen for. But to be honest, I'm hoping some guys don't go absolutely nuts. I'm hoping that Callum Mills isn't best on ground. I'm hoping that Paddy Dow doesn't get another 35 touches. You know, I'm hoping that a few other guys just play the role but don't necessarily star. It sounds stupid, but I don't want a few of my point of difference picks to just all of a sudden be jumped all over. And, you know, a little bit of that happened last week. But so it's a funny little Supercoach thing. You want to see a bit, but maybe not too much, just so every man and his dog doesn't jump on board. But let's get stuck into a few names. I think for Carlton, like I said, Paddy Dow, Zach Williams, and I'm sure a few will be looking at Sam Walsh. They're definitely a few guys that are right on the radar. Dow, in particular, you know, I think there'll be a lot of people. His ownership went up like 3% to 20 odd, and I'm sure if he has another good game, he could even lift that further. So he's a bit of a talking point at the moment. Over at the Saints, you've got Tommy Highmore, definitely a really good option in the backline rookies at the moment. Let's hope he can sort of cement that and make sure he's in line for a round one spot. Mason Wood, I reckon a few people might just have a little eye just to see what he does. And that ruck position, you know, how's Hunter going to go? Can he make it his own? I don't think Ryder's been named, so it's a great opportunity for him to really put a claim forward for that position. And Hunter Clark as well. I'm sure he's on a couple of people's radar. Not too many, he's a bit unique, but I think if he can get a bit of midfield time, I think he's been about 3 or 4% of sides. People will be happy with that. Collingwood and Richmond. I think the main thing for the Pies is like we've got a lot of rookies, and who's going to play that midfield spot? You know, you've got Oliver Henry, McRae, Trent Bianco, Reef McGuinness as well. And really, is it Braden Sear that's going to fill that spot in the midfield? Who's really going to step up to the plate without Treloar? And Adams, I don't think, will be playing either. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for some youngsters to really push their case. And from a Supercoach point of view, Braden Sear seems to be the one that is most interesting for us. Jeremy Howe, a few guys like the look of him. I'm not a massive fan of him this year, but I think people will be looking to see that he gets through unscathed and is looking good. So a few people will be taking a look at him. As for the Tigers, not too much. I mean, I think clearly Shea Bolton is a guy. Riley Collier-Dawkins is another guy that I'm sure a few people will be taking a look at as well. I'm just presuming he's named. I mean, I'm doing this before, well, basically all these teams are dropped, so I'm not exactly sure how many of these rookies will get a crack. So apologies if I name a couple of guys that actually aren't named. I think if they're not named, that'll tell us enough, won't it? So, but Collier-Dawkins, he's certainly a pretty highly touted youngster, and we'll be hoping to break into the side. Over at North Melbourne, There's actually North Melbourne and Hawthorn. I reckon if you're going to sit down and watch a game from a Supercoach point of view, this is the one. This will give you a really good feel on the rookies and quite a lot of guys that are of interest. Of course, Jack Zeeble, people will be looking out for what he does. But then you got Will Phillips, Tom Powell, Phoenix Spicer, Lockie Young. A lot of guys that I think people are really keeping a close eye on. And over at the Hawks, Denver, Granger Barras, Connor Downey, Finn McGuinness. I'm a massive fan of him. I hope he can get some midfield time. And Tyler Brockman as well. People will be looking at Tom Phillips, Jarman Impey. So this game's got a lot going on. Some mid-price and a lot of rookies. And they're two clubs that I think will offer some opportunities to some rookies. Of that, I really want to see Granger Barras play well. I think he's got some good scoring potential just with his intercepting abilities. And Tom Powell is probably the one that I've been most warming to, just his price point and the fact that he played so well last week. So, we'll definitely get a few more answers on who's really going to be in those round one sides. So that'll be interesting. Then we got Geelong and Essendon. Not too much really from the Cats. I think Dangerfield, sort of obvious, but he showed enough last week, I reckon. They'll just be looking for a full game from him, I'd imagine. And Jordan Clark falls into that category of, I don't need you to do anything, Jordan. You go and fine, mate. Just don't tell the whole world how good you are, basically. Because I'm a massive rap for him. He's been in my side since day dot. And I kind of just want to keep a lid on him. I don't need him to bang the door down. I just need him to be good enough, get through the game, and he'll play round one, I reckon, and he'll play bloody well. Over at the Bombers, there's a bit going on. You've got Alec Waterman, put his hand up with those 4 goals the other week. 102k rookie in the forward line. Got to be a good chance, in that Bombers forward setup. Archie Perkins, Jai Caldwell, and of course Dyson Heppel. Where's he at? What's he doing? There'll be a lot of interest around him. Nick Cox put his hand up. And personally, Sammy Draper is a guy that I've got huge raps on that I'll be looking forward to seeing how he goes about it. But there's a bit in there for the Bombers, I reckon. I think a lot of people will want to see something from Caldwell. And Heppel will have to do some convincing as well. So I think there's some opportunity in the Bombers lineup that a few will be looking to jump on board, I reckon. And if we just flick over to the Giants and Sydney, this game actually has a lot to offer too. One of the games that I probably had the most names written down for. The Giants are an intriguing prospect. You got Taranto, Tom Green, Stephen Cornelio, Flynn, Isaac Cumming, Jacob Ware, and Tanner Bruin as well. I've probably mispronounced a couple of those guys' names, but stay with me. I think Taranto is super interesting. Looks like he's going to get stacks of midfield time. Attended 15 of the 16 centre bounces last week. That'll warm the hearts of many. I'm not sure his ball use is the greatest. That's my only knock on him. But Tom Green, he looked the goods. He's proving to be a very popular selection. Cornelio, he offers value, but I just wonder, where's he fit in? Does he have the ceiling these days? Well, we know he's got the ceiling, but does he have that average ceiling? He can go 200, but he can throw in a 60. So, and Flynn, looks like he's locked that down. And then there's just a few young guys that I think have an opportunity to state their claim. So really interesting at GWS. And Sydney as well. Callum Mills, of course. Lots of talk about him. I'm super interested to see what Braden Campbell can produce. I really love his ball use. And the Swans are talking a lot of positives around him. He could make himself a must-have rookie. He's a mid-forward, about 189. Could make himself a must-have by the end of the weekend. Will Gould looks like he's a real good chance for round one. Errol Goulden as well. Pushed his case. Nick Blakey looks really dynamic. Probably a bit risky, but gee, he looks the goods. And Isaac Heaney, I think a lot of people will be wanting to see just what he can produce. I've sort of cooled on him a bit. I was red hot on him. You know my love for him. I'm a massive fan of Heaney, but you just want him in the guts. I'm not sure we're going to get it though. If he plays forward, then that might concern a few people. Adelaide and Port Adelaide, I think. Haitley is definitely a guy that people will want to see a bit from. He's certainly a fella that has gone for opportunity. I just wonder if he can really show it. And probably people might need to see a bit. I think he's one that maybe needs to convince you. Chase Jones, just a bit of a random one, but I reckon he's got some upside. James Rowe and Riley Thilthorpe as well. A couple of guys that are rookie options that many are considering. And in the Crows outfit that's pretty weak, they're going to struggle this year. there should be plenty of chance for some youngsters. Over at Port Adelaide, you've got Zach Butters. He seems to be the talk of the town. A lot of interest on the Q&A about him. People sort of wondering if he can take that next step. So I'm sure a lot of people will be checking out where he lines up and hopefully see a few centre bounces. You got Fantasia as well. He's in quite a few sides, which surprises me. He's not my cup of tea, but Lockie Jones, he's in the back line. Looks like a really good chance to debut in round one. He's about 140k. He looks like he's about 25, but he's definitely a chance to place plenty of footy this year. West Coast and Freo, you got Liam Duggan. He's sort of been really warming to a lot of people, I feel. Like the promise of a bit more midfield time could be a chance to get that, but I think people will want to see it and see what he can do with it. He's awkwardly priced, if you ask me. I think there's a lot going on in the back line that's positive. I'd probably prefer to take a little risk on him or a guy like him. I prefer to take those risks in the forward line this year, but he is proving popular. Jermaine Jones has put his hand up a little bit throughout the pre-season. Alex Witherden likewise. So a few guys that may have provoked a little bit of interest. Over at Port Adelaide, over at Fremantle even, you've got Josh Treachy. He's like 102k. I think he's a ruck forward, so apparently he's had a really good pre-season. It could be half a chance. Heath Chapman. You've got Hayden Young, a couple of guys in the back line there, which I'm massive fan of Young. And Chapman's also had a really good pre-season and pushed his case. Half a chance for a debut. Luke Valente as well. Really mature age, sort of rookie in the midfield. I think he's like 123k. He's got to be half a chance to debut if he's good enough. And Nat Fyfe as well. He's quite popular, but all this talk about time in the forward line, that's got to concern you, doesn't it? So I think there's a few people that might just be looking to see where he lines up and what the percentages are. Western Bulldogs and Melbourne. I'm sure a lot of people would have jumped off the Josh Dunkley bandwagon after Luke Beveridge's comments, but people will be taking a look at him. Anthony Scott as well over at the Dogs. He's half a chance to push his case and will need another good performance. And Steph Martin as well. I think he's someone that people are really considering as a cheap ruck option. He'll share it with Timmy English, so let's just see what sort of dynamic they can kind of work with. And over at Melbourne, you got Bailey Laurie, who I don't really know too much about, to be honest, but he's in quite a few sides. James Harms as well. He's sort of a bit of a unique point of difference down back. I think a lot of people are hoping he can find that midfield position again, and he averaged like 95, I think, a couple of years back. James Jordan was really impressive as well in Melbourne's first hit out. Probably a bit of an unknown guy, but I just wonder if he has another good game, he could be a bit of a bolter for round one. And finally, we have Gold Coast and Brisbane. I couldn't find much for Gold Coast except for Matty Rowell. I think a lot of people have been red hot on him. I certainly haven't been one. If you've watched this channel this pre-season, you certainly know that I think it's crazy that he's so popular. I think there's far better options. He's just a young man, still finding his way, albeit finding it pretty quickly, but I think he's super risky. And he did show some shaky signs last week. And I just wonder if people are just cooling on him a touch. I think they might want to see a bit more from him this week. Brisbane, there's a lot going on though. You got Eli Smith, Tom Fullerton, another young guy, might be a chance to get some games. Joe Danaher, clearly he's been the talk of the town, hasn't he? I would imagine he's been one of the highest increases in ownership over this last week, myself included. Cam Rayner, big fan of him. Again, we saw a bit of promise last week that he'll get midfield minutes. Probably just want to see that again. And Dane Zorko as well. I think a few people are still bullish on him. I think he'll play quite a bit of time forward and sort of step back from that midfield role, which again ties into Rayner getting more opportunity. So I'd probably be steering clear of Zorko, but there'll be people who love him and be sort of looking out to see where he does play. So that's a wrap. That is a wrap. And I might just get myself a glass of water after just going hammer and tong for about 13, 14 minutes. But, nothing. I haven't given you too many details today. Not too much opinion, just a whole bunch of names. But I think it's always interesting. People, sort of want to know who is really on the radar at the moment and which guys to really consider. And I think this is a pretty reasonable list of guys that we'll be watching closely. Some really popular names in here for Supercoach. So thanks for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And I'd love you to get along to my live session next week. Stay tuned in terms of when that is. I'll get my roster today, and I'll have something about that soon. So I'm about to knock this one out, put it up, and then I'll probably get stuck into some league videos. So yeah, all the best. Enjoy the footy over the weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.